second series in our video, and we're going to go over the actual mixing process to get the colors mixed into the resins and how to mix the A and B and then pour them into these. Fairly simple. It's a 1-to-1 mix ratio. So we can use these mixing cups, and I'm going to show you how to do this. A lot of times what we do is we eyeball them into these because some of these cups you can get from a Walmart actually have lines put into them. So it might be a good idea to take a Sharpie and just draw a line on the cup that will tell you how far to fill the A and the B. This works really well when you're pouring large areas or you're pouring a lot of resin at one time, whereas the smaller bottles are better for pouring tighter, smaller areas and not as much at one time. So first we'll go and we'll start with mixing into this cup. As you can see, I've got the things marked before I start pouring. This just helps to aid and know how much you put in. It's crucial that you get the exact amount of the A and the B put together, otherwise you're going to increase your probability of that resin not curing properly, being sticky after it's already cured, or just cracking. Get into the habit to always putting the B in first. Even if you're going to add color or do clear, it's always better to do the B first, because we found it's best to mix the color into the B completely before you even put the A in. It gives you more working time and it allows you to get the color spread evenly throughout the resin. The first one we're going to do is we're going to show you how to do the one shot. What we found works best is just to take a popsicle stick, and you do not need much. Every color will vary. You'll find from the dyes to different colors, especially white and colors that tend to be more transparent, like yellows and whites, that you'll need more color than as opposed to reds and blues. So I'm just going to dip a little bit, and as you can see, just a little bit of the popsicle stick is coated. I stir it in thoroughly. Make sure you scrape the edges of the cup so the dye is spread evenly throughout the resin. As you can see, the resin is completely opaque right now. Now let it settle so you can see your level. And then take your A and fill it. Now you have to mix the A into the B, and this is where you should start your timer, because you're going to have a specific amount of time before this resin heats up. It starts to harden to the point where it's no longer going to be usable to squirt out of the small tip fine bottle or even pour out openly out of a cup. Be sure to scrape all the edges of the container and get the bottom. I'm going to show you how to pour this into the fine tip bottle. The best thing is to do just a narrow stream. As you can see, we measured out, so there's almost zero waste. No need to shake the bottle, it's already been thoroughly mixed. These bottles are closed at the end, so we just take a utility knife and cut the end off. It's also very important that before we do this, that we properly treat the plastic with the flame torch to remove any frayed plastic ends and remove any possible moisture that may be sitting, or dust that may be sitting in the bottom of the thing. We like to air hose it first, and then what you do is you take and just hit it with the flame torch to clean it up. As you can see, a little bit goes a long way. I've only used half the bottle and I've already completed that many parts. Now that we're done pouring, you'll probably notice some small discoloration in the resin. It almost looks like white bubbling. Now, if you allow this to cure this way, those will remain. The way to take this out is to use your flame torch. Be very careful not to let the heat get too high or to leave the torch dwell too long on one spot. You could affect the curing of the resin, and you can also melt the plastic or discolor the plastic around the resin. All you really need to do is let the torch pass over it a few times. You can visually see the bubbles being removed from the resin as you're doing this. Probably allow that to cure in room temperature for 5 to 10 minutes, and it will start to get hard. If you stick your finger in it, you will leave a fingerprint in it. It's going to take another half hour to 45 minutes, but it still will not be cured. The best way to cure these, we have found, is to put them in an oven at around 100 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 30 minutes. If you don't have that option, then we use the option because we're not working in a completely clean environment. Dust will settle on the resin when it's not cured and leave it foggy. If you're working in a clean environment, I would suggest just leaving them sit overnight in a maintained temperature and humidity room, and you'll get good results. Next one I'm going to show you is to mix the dye, and I'm going to mix the dye in this cup here. Once again, take the bead. You've got various different dyes that you can select from. You may want to test these dyes first to check the actual color that's based on the amount of the dye that you put in. I just put in a couple drops to start out with. And I can see that the resin is still a little bit transparent, so I'll add a little bit more. And now we've got a deep dark red. You can experiment also with mixing the two dyes. White dyes with red dyes might tone the red down, so it turns into more of a pinkish or a bright red hue. But for this example, we'll just keep it the same. Now we're going to take our A and add the A. I can still see my line. This will be a good time to show you guys how to use the poly purge if you decide to use it. All this can does right here is it's a compressed air can that's going to remove any bad air from the container. So I just take it, squirt it in for a couple seconds, seal your resin. That will extend the shelf life. If you use the resin like we do, you're probably not going to have to worry about it too much. But if you plan to have the resin sitting on the shelves for more than 2 or 3 months, you might want to make this a regular practice. Now we've got both our A and our B mixed up, so our clock is ticking once again that this is going to cure. If we go back to the blue bottle that we already used, you can see that it's still viscous, but it's already starting to turn hard and the bottle is heating up. So that tells you only have really a few minutes left before it's unworkable. Really want to be sure to get all the sides and the bottom. Now, pouring directly from the cup is advised only with larger areas. And with larger areas, please refer to the literature that we sent you. In some wide expanse areas, it may be necessary to apply anchors into the larger open areas to secure the resin to prevent it from popping out of that cavity. We're going to pour these right here, and I'm going to also pour this one right here. Pouring the resin, check to make sure that the resin has filled the actual side walls of the plastic. Sometimes if you're using a multicolored plastic like we are here to show you the detail, you may find that there's a white halo from where the interior color of the plastic meets. What you want to do is make sure that resin cavity is filled up to the point where it almost grabs the top edge of the plastic cavity, but without overflowing. Pouring into the center of a cavity, the resin will self-level itself, but you may need to find a small tool to get into smaller areas, like the tips of the arrows or the corners of letters or numbers that are hard to get into, and the resin may not flow smoothly into those areas. Especially after the resin starts to cure and it loses viscosity, it will not flow into those areas as easy as it would have if it was a brand new mixture. What we'll do once again is take the flame torch over and take the bubbles out. And we can even go back over the blue several times because there's still the ability to take bubbles out that have come to the surface. I would recommend doing this process twice. Flame torch use, we're basically letting these things sit in place without movement for at least 10 to 15 minutes at room temperature. Once again, if you have an oven where you can heat these to 100 to 110 degrees for 20 to 30 minutes, that's going to speed the curing process and probably help in your finished result. Controlling the humidity and the temperature in the room is crucial. If you can do those two things, then you won't need to use the oven. This takes care of the pouring process. I think that covers everything. In the next video, we'll show you how to do metallics and mix and pour the metallics and coat them really clear.